Kindly confirm if I am clearly audible to all of you so that we can start off with the session. Please confirm once in the chat if I am clearly audible to all of you. Okay, fine. Good evening, everyone. We are again back with another session basically. Now, this is something pretty different from what we were doing up till now. So, since past months, we have been, going on. There's a particular question paper series going on our YouTube channel. So, we have been solving multiple question papers of different government examinations, and recently we have also started with your previous year question paper solving session for your GATE examination. Now, as all of you are, I'm assuming those of you who are here, you are some kind of an aspirant for some examination. So one thing we know very well is previous year question papers is very, very important, right? So definitely that is something that we have started already, and it will be something that will be going on with, right? But apart from that, there are few in GATE, there are few topics, or you can say few concepts which are very, very important, and from which questions are inevitably asked every year. You can expect 1 or 2 questions every year from certain topics in GATE examination. And these topics are such, it's very simple and it's very scoring. Something like that is your urban housing topic, housing shortage calculation. Now, when we talk about housing shortage calculation, please note that this is not just for your GATE, it is also going to be very helpful for your other competitive examination. Like previously, there have been questions from your urban housing in your RPSC. Numericals now, as such, numericals are not asked generally in your government examination because time factor is one of the things which occurs there. But conceptually, you can have questions from these areas. Okay, you may not have numerical questions, you can have theoretical questions from these areas. So this urban housing is a very important topic, or you can say urban housing is basically a subject in GATE. So urban housing is a very important subject when you talk about GATE, and urban housing is not just important for GATE but also for your any competitive examination. Like if you're preparing right now for CPWD, urban housing is one of the subjects which is in CPWD. Then if you're planning for your, let's say, HPSC, maybe we have urban housing, right? If you're somebody who has started planning for your UPSC, in that also we have urban housing. So urban housing is a very, very important subject. And in urban housing, there are few topics from which questions are asked. For example, let's say if I talk about GATE, since it's a GATE preparation series. So if I talk about GATE specifically, every year you can expect one numerical question from urban housing. That can be from your, let's say, numerical question related to FAR, or maybe dwelling unit calculation, or maybe your density calculation, gross density, net density calculation, or it can be from the housing shortage calculation. Any area questions are expected. Okay? And as I told you, it's a very simple topic. Once you understand the concept, you can easily solve it. It's a very scoring kind of a question. Okay, so in today's session we will be talking about your housing shortage calculation, as to how to do the housing shortage calculation. Okay, now, similarly, we'll have this is kind of a series. We will be going on with multiple important topics which are very important in GATE. So, if you're somebody who's preparing for GATE, let's say at home, then this is kind of going to be very helpful to you. It's kind of like a little bit support to your preparation in some way, and kind of will help you to, make your preparation much more stronger for your GATE. Okay, fine. So, let's start with today's session. Housing shortage calculation. Now, when we talk about housing shortage calculation, the question that comes to our mind is, what is the situation of housing in India? The question that should come to our mind is situation of housing in India. Now, if we talk about situation of housing in India, if I ask you one question, that what do you think is the condition of housing, or let's say what do you think about the, do we have some kind of a shortage, or do we have enough amount of housing? If this is a question, then you will see housing shortage is something that is existing in India since a long period of time. And not just India, but in many countries, many developed countries also. India is a developing country, but many developed countries also have problem of housing shortage, have problem of homelessness. So this is a factor which is very, very, something which is very, very important, very crucial. We are facing housing shortage in our country right now. And because of that, there has been a lot of steps which have been taken by the government. Now the question comes, what is the housing shortage? That means how much amount of housing shortage exactly in numbers we have. If I tell you about the numbers, then basically MOHUPA, that is Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, they have, based on their report of 2012, the housing shortage in India at present is 18.78 million dwelling units. 18.78 million dwelling units. It's not in lakhs. It's not in, some kind of thousands or lakhs. It is in millions, okay? So 18.78 million dwelling unit. And in that 18.78 million, you'll be very surprised to know that 95% of shortage occurs for your EWS and LIG section. And rest 5% shortage occurs in your HIG and MIG section. So maximum amount of shortage is generally for the lower strata, lower economic profile of the country. Now the question comes, why is this amount of shortage going on? What is the reason for this shortage? Firstly, construction is very expensive. Secondly, land is very expensive. So what happens is that when there is a particular real estate builder, they build a particular land, it kind of goes beyond the affordability range of your EWS and LIG section. The housing is no more affordable for them. Okay. Secondly, let's say if you're a real estate developer and you are being given a chance to either develop housing for your higher income group people or develop housing for your economically weaker section or low income group people, you will obviously prefer to invest in the higher income group people because the amount of return that you can get from them, it's comparatively more, right? So that is why people, or you can say real estate developers, they generally prefer to invest in these areas. Third, as I already told you, the price has increased immensely. Land shortage is there, so land cost is already very high. There are a lot of archaic bylaws, like the bylaws are pretty old and they do not accommodate for the complete usage. Now what happens is that, let's say you have a land, in that a lot of land kind of goes in waste, is not completely utilized because of these concepts like ground coverage, FAR and all of these things. Okay? So let's say if there's 50% ground coverage, half of your land is basically remaining unused. So these are the problems because of which we still have the problem of housing shortage. Now, government has definitely taken a lot of steps. There are a lot of centrally sponsored schemes which are running. For example, PMAY, very important concept. PMAY, a very important concept. If you are preparing for any examination, please read about PMAY in depth. PMAY, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now, under this Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, you have multiple kind of sub-schemes. It's a very important scheme and questions have been asked from PMAY multiple times in previous years, whether it is GATE or any other paper also. Okay. Now, PMAY scheme is there. Apart from that, state governments also have their own state-sponsored schemes. Then we have, we have a lot of, for example, steps have been taken by government, like your SRZ areas. Special residential zone. SRZ is your special residential zone. Special residential zones. Like for example, you have SEZ area, that is special economic area. You must have heard about special economic area. Similarly, you have areas like special residential zones. So these are basically specific areas in a city. Let's say if this is your city, in this particular city, the government will demarcate a particular SRZ area. What is the concept of this SRZ area? This area is specifically kept reserved for development of housing or for development of affordable housing for your EWS and LIG section. Now, in these areas, the taxes taxes are kind of, the taxes are no more levied. The taxes are it's kind of not applicable in these areas. You don't have to pay certain property taxes. Also, the approval of the plans of these areas, any kind of construction you're doing in this area, the plan approval is very fast track. So you get a lot of advantage if you're kind of constructing doing any kind of construction in this area. Okay, so the government has demarcated those lands. So steps have been taken. It's not like steps have not been taken. And as compared to, how the situation was initially, like around 90s, we had a shortage of 21 million. So definitely the numbers have come down a little bit, but we have a long way to go. Okay, so this is kind of the theoretical aspect, you can say. From these kind of areas, questions can be asked. Sometimes they directly ask you what is the shortage of housing. Now, coming to our main calculation concept based on which we can try to understand what is happening is, when we talk about housing shortage, before we go into housing shortage, let's look into two terms. First term is your dwelling unit. First concept is the concept of dwelling unit. Dwelling unit is what? It is a structure which has all the facilities of living, bathing, sleeping and eating facilities in which one or more people live. Basically, this is basically definition from NBC. Okay, so let me write down first and then I'll explain. So what is a dwelling unit? It is basically structure having facilities like living, sleeping, eating, etc., in which one or more people live. Okay, so basically the house in which you live, that is known as dwelling unit. In urban housing, we don't use the term house, we don't use the term apartment. We generally, whenever we're doing calculation, we refer to it as dwelling unit. So dwelling unit is basically that structure in which you have different facilities like living, sleeping, bathing, eating. You have, like in your house, you have all these facilities in which one or more people live. That is your dwelling unit. And then you have this another term which is your household. Now, dwelling unit is written as DU in short and household is written as HH in short. Now, when we talk about household is what? Household consists of one or more person who basically live together in the same dwelling unit and share meal from the same kitchen. So that is you can say that is the main line, share meal out of the same kitchen. Basically, a number of people who eat from the same kitchen. They live together, but they also eat from the same kitchen. So household is what? It is consists of one or more persons who live together in the same DU and share meal from the same kitchen. And share meal from same kitchen. That is the household. So in very simple terms, if I have to tell you what is a household, you can refer to household or not refer. Basically, we are going to call it household only. But you can understand household is what? It is a family. It is a family. And what is your dwelling unit? Dwelling unit is the house in which the family lives in. Okay? So let's say if you have 10 families, let's take an example, let's say if you have 10 families, then how many households or how many dwelling units do you require to house 10 families? You require 10 dwelling units. That is, you have 10 households, you can call it households also. You have 10 households. In order to house 10 households, you require 10 dwelling units. Okay? So one household equal to one dwelling unit. So household is basically like a family. So now, whenever you have a family, you'll have number of members living in a family, 5 members, sometimes it's 10 members, sometimes it is, like in India, we have joint family, we have nuclear family. So in certain families, you have 4 members, in some families, you may have 3 members only, in some families, you may have 10 members. So how do we get an average? So what we do is, because calculation, see, in calculation, when we are doing it, when we are calculating, we cannot take different numbers. You have to take a average household size. Okay? So how do we take, what do we take as an average household size? We consider the average household size in India for any kind of calculation. The average household size which is taken 4.5. So unless and until it is mentioned in the question that the household size is 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, you will consider 4.5 as the average household size. Okay. If sometimes they do not give it in the question, household size they don't give it in the question, so you are going to assume household size to be 4.5. It is, if it is given, then you will take the number which is given in the question. Okay. I hope this is clear to you. Fine. Now, let's go into now let's come to the topic of your housing shortage calculation. Let's assume that there is a particular city. There is a particular city, city X. Let's say in this city X there are 10,000 households. That means what? Families. 10,000 households live in this particular city. Okay. So 10,000 household live, how many, that means what? How many dwelling units do we require? We require 10,000 dwelling units, right? Ideally, if there are 10,000 households, we would require 10,000 dwelling units, but that is not the case. Let's say presently there are only 8,000 dwelling units. At present existing, there are only 8,000 dwelling units. So as per that concept, what will be the housing shortage? Based on that concept, what will be the housing shortage? 10,000 minus 8,000, right? Ideally there is 10,000 households, so ideally we require 10,000 dwelling units, right? But there are no 10,000 dwelling units, there are only 8,000 dwelling units. So based on that concept, what is the housing shortage? 10,000 minus 8,000. Now let's say out of this 8,000 dwelling unit, let's say out of this 8,000 dwelling unit, let's say 2,000 dwelling unit is dilapidated. Let's say 2,000 dwelling unit is dilapidated. Dilapidated means in a very bad condition. Let's say structurally weak. Now we know that what is see, every property has some kind of a lifetime. Okay? Let's say if we talk about concrete buildings, then the lifetime of a concrete building is what? It is something around 80 to 100 years. So after 100 years, we render that particular structure as no more useful. Its lifeline has crossed, so it has structurally become weak. Now, there are a lot of houses in the city which will be structurally weak. That means it is not fit for habitation. So, you have to replace those houses also. If you are the government, providing extra housing, definitely you have to provide extra houses. But you have to also replace these 2,000 houses. Why? Because those are dilapidated, those are very weak in structure, they have become structurally weak and they are not fit for habitation. So, we have to replace that also. So, what we do is now, what will be the housing shortage? What we will do? We will add 2,000. Why are we adding 2,000? Because 2,000 extra dwelling unit also we have to provide, right? So initially when we were not considering your dilapidated housing, at that point 10,000 household, 8,000 dwelling units. So what was the housing shortage? 2,000 was the housing shortage, right? 2,000 dwelling unit. But now we saw that 2,000 dwelling unit is in dilapidated conditions. That means we have to provide extra 2,000 dwelling unit. So that is why we are adding 2,000 here, right? Something like this. So what is the shortage? What is the shortage? It is 4,000 dwelling unit. Okay, so based on this we can form the formula of housing shortage. What is the formula? Housing shortage equals to number of households, I'm writing in short HH, number of households minus number of existing dwelling unit, number of existing dwelling unit minus number of dilapidated dwelling unit. This is the formula for your housing shortage. Okay, this is it's not something out randomly out of the air. Okay, number of household, what is number of household? 10,000 is number of household minus number of existing dwelling unit. 8,000 is the number of existing, that means at this particular point how many dwelling units are there, and 2,000 is what number of dilapidated dwelling unit. Okay, so we can basically convert it into formula. This is the formula of housing shortage. Any kind of question can be solved just by using this particular formula. Okay, I hope it is clear to everybody. Now next we will go into the concept of housing demand and housing shortage. Next we'll go into the concept of your housing demand and housing shortage. Not shortage, sorry, housing need and housing demand. Now, when we talk about housing need and housing demand, let's try to understand what does need and what does demand means. Need is what? It is the basic requirement, right? For example, everybody needs food to survive, everybody needs water to survive, everybody needs air to survive, right? It is the basic requirement, something which everybody needs, irrespective of which economic background you are from, which social background you are from, which cultural background you are from. Everybody needs food, right? It's not like people from India need food, people from other countries they don't need food. Everybody need food. So need means what? It is the basic necessity. So what is housing need? Basic necessity. Housing is needed by everybody. Everybody in a country needs a house to stay in, right? Everybody needs, nobody would prefer to stay outside on the pavements. So housing need is what? It is nothing but something which is a basic requirement of every human being. So housing need is something, it's a requirement by every single human being, right? And demand is what? Demand is basically backed up by the ability to pay. So let's say if I'm hungry, I need food, right? I am hungry, I need food to eat so that I can satiate my hunger. But can I demand food? Can I demand food? That depends on the amount of money that I have. So if I have money, I can demand food. Let's say if I'm going to the restaurant, I can demand food only if I have money. If I don't have money, I cannot demand food. Similarly, housing need is what? This is a requirement of every basic human being. But housing demand is only created by those who can pay, those who can afford. So if you cannot afford, you cannot create a housing demand. Okay. So housing need is what? Just give me a minute, please. Okay. Yes. Housing need will be what? Housing need is nothing but it is your housing shortage. For example, if I look into the previous example, this one, see, we saw that 4,000 is the housing shortage. We are not talking in this, see, in this 10,000 families, there will be some families who are rich, there will be some families who are poor. We are not talking about who is able to pay, who is not able to pay. We are just talking about overall shortage. So, overall shortage signifies what? This signifies the housing need. That means all these people, they require houses. Okay, so if we just talk about these two aspects, that means what? 2,000 families need housing. We're not talking about out of that 2,000 family who is able to pay, who is not able to pay. So simply put, housing need is nothing but housing need is equals to your housing shortage. Okay, and what is housing demand? Housing demand is housing shortage minus people who cannot afford. So what did I tell you? Demand will only be generated by people who are able to pay. So basically from housing shortage, we are subtracting the people who cannot pay or the people who cannot afford. In some questions, it is written as BPL population, that is below poverty line population. Okay? So when we subtract all those people who are unable to pay, we are basically finding out the housing demand. Okay? I hope this concept is also clear. The concept of housing need and housing demand. I hope this is also clear to all of you. Okay. So from this particular point, a lot of questions can be made. So we have learned three concepts. What are the three concepts? We have talked about housing shortage calculation, and then we have talked about two concepts of housing need and housing demand. Let's look into what kind of questions can be asked from this particular part. Okay. This is a question which was asked previously in 2006. So in this question, there are multiple subparts. It's a 2-mark question, very easy question. Easily you can score 2 marks. Okay. So in this particular, I'll just move out of the frame for a minute so that you can look at the question once. Okay. So basically, this question was asked in 2006. Let's look into it and let's try to solve. What you can do is you can try to pause the video here and you can try to solve it on its own. But we'll try to solve in the class. Okay, let's look into it. Fine. Okay, what is the question saying? A town with an area of 340 hectares has 15,000 households. So there is a town, the area of the town is 340 hectares. And it has 15,000 households. The number of occupied DU is 12,400. Occupied DU means basically the number of existing DU. Nothing but the number of existing DU is 12,400. Out of which 15% are in a dilapidated condition. So out of these 12,400 dwelling unit, 15% are in a dilapidated condition. 5% of the households are below poverty line. That means basically 5% of the households cannot pay and unable to afford any type of dwelling unit. Okay? So what are they asking? Question number 1. Let's look into question number 1. The present density of the town DU per acre is approximately. So let's say, see, density, we all know what is density. If I talk about population density, it is the number of total population per unit area, right? That is what your density is, something per unit area. If I ask you what is dwelling unit density, means dwelling unit per unit area, right? So even if you don't know, let's say you're completely blank, you don't know what density is, first time hearing about density, it is written here, DU per acre. They have given you the unit also, DU per acre. That means dwelling unit divided by area. Acre is what? Area. That will give you the density of the town, right? So what is the area of the town? 340 hectares. Area is what? 340 hectares. But here it is given in terms of acre. So what we have to do? We have to do conversion of hectares into acre. Now there are a few conversions which you have to keep in mind irrespective of everything else. First conversion is, let me write it down here for you. 1 hectare equals to 10,000 meters square. 1 acre is equals to 4046.86 meter square. Okay, these are the two units which we have. Fine. I hope there are no doubts. If you have any doubts, you can definitely put it down in the comment below. Now, these are the two, I hope this is visible to you. These are the two conversion factors which you have to remember. This will be useful for any kind of question in your urban housing. So, 1 hectares to meter square. 1 hectare to meter square and 1 acre to meter square. Okay. So based on this, if we have 340 hectares, first we'll convert this hectare into meter square, right? 340 into 10,000, and then we'll convert this meter square into acres. So when you do all the conversion, the amount which you will get in acre is something around 840.16 acre. I'm not doing the conversion. You can do the conversion. It's given here. It's very basic. Okay. So area from hectares to acre, 840.16 acre. So what they are asking you to find the density. So as per question number 1, density is how much? As per question number 1, density in du per acre. Du per acre means du divided by acre. So what is the number of dwelling units? 12,400 divided by acre, that is area, 840.16. When you divide, how much you get? You get something like 14.67, something like this. Basically, you can round it off. See, you have the options given. The closest option you have is option A, which is 15. So it's approximately equals to 15 du per acre. Okay, so this is the answer for the first one. Very easy, right? Not a very difficult one. It's a pretty easy one, right? Okay, second question. What are they asking in the second question? Housing need of the town is approximately how much? Housing need they are asking. What did we say? Housing need is something that is generated by every person, right? So housing need is nothing but housing shortage only. I'm writing in short. Housing need is nothing but housing shortage only. And what was the formula for housing shortage? Just draw a line here. What was the formula for housing shortage? Housing shortage formula is what? Number of households minus existing DU minus dilapidated DU. I have written in short, okay? Existing DU minus dilapidated DU. Number of households. Do we know number of households? Yes, we know number of households. Existing dwelling unit. Yes, we know existing dwelling unit. Dilapidated dwelling unit. It is given in percentage. So what they are saying that 15% of the dwelling unit is your dilapidated dwelling unit. Any confusion? No, I hope it's clear. Fine. So they are saying what? 15% of the dwelling unit is dilapidated dwelling unit. So let's first try to find out what is 15%. So dilapidated DU, 15% of how much? 15% of 12,400. If you find this out, you will get something like 1860 dwelling unit. So dilapidated dwelling unit we found out, right? Now we can put this in your housing shortage. So in housing shortage, number of households is 15,000 minus existing dwelling unit is 12,400 minus dilapidated is 1860. When you kind of calculate this, you'll get something like 4460 dwelling unit. Okay, so as per that, answer is D. Fine. Now housing shortage is 4460. Housing need is what? Housing need is equals to housing shortage. So housing need is 4460 dwelling unit only. Okay. Next question mein, what are they asking? In the next question, they're asking us to calculate the housing demand of the town. Okay, let me erase this. I hope you have taken it down. Let me erase this part so that I can do the calculation here without having to go to the next. Chaliye. Next, what they are asking us to calculate the housing demand of the town. What is the housing demand? What was the formula for housing demand? Housing demand is nothing but housing shortage minus, here you have BPL population, so I'm writing BPL population. Okay, now what is the BPL population? They have given us 5% of the households are the BPL population. So BPL population is how much? 5% of the household. So 5 by 100 of the household. What is household? 15,000. So that will amount to something like 750 households. So basically 750 households are below poverty line. So these 750 households are not able to pay. So that is why housing demand will be how much? Housing demand equals to housing shortage. What is housing shortage? 4460 minus 750. When you calculate this, you will get something like 3710 dwelling units. So 3710 is the answer. As per this, D is the answer. Fine. I hope it is clear how to do the calculation for housing demand, housing need and your density also, right? The formulas which we have learned, we have just used them. Okay, you can pause the video and have a look, and I hope if you have tried to solve it on your own, you have solved it. Chaliye, let's look into one more question if we have one. Okay, this was the question which was asked in 2009. A town with a population of 50,000. So population of the town is 50,000. Has an average household size of 5. So household size is 5. Okay. The number of occupied dwelling unit is 8,400, out of which 10% are in dilapidated condition. What is the housing demand? Chaliye. So in this question, basically it's comparatively simple. You just have one calculation to do here, nothing else. They have simply asked what is the housing demand. See, let's say that you don't understand anything, you are not able to understand the link. Generally, you should be able to form a link. If I have the population, I have the household size, I can find the number of households. Let's say if you are not able to draw that link, look at what they are asking in the question, housing demand. Simply write the formula for what they are asking. So what is the formula of housing demand? Housing demand is what? Housing shortage minus BPL population, basically people who cannot pay, right? Housing shortage, what is the formula of housing shortage? Housing shortage equals to number of households minus existing dwelling unit minus dilapidated dwelling unit. This is the formula of housing shortage. Do we have number of households? We do not have number of households, but we have population, we have the household size, we can calculate number of households, right? Do we have existing dwelling unit? Yes, we have existing dwelling unit. Do we have dilapidated dwelling unit? No, we don't have, but we can calculate. So let's do the calculations on this side first. First, let's find out about the households. Number of household. See, you have the population 50,000 and you have the household size. So if you divide your population by household size, you can directly get the number of household size. So 50,000 divided by 5, that is your 10,000. Okay? So number of households is 10,000 household. Next, dilapidated condition. So they are saying that 10% is in dilapidated condition. So dilapidated dwelling unit equals to how much? 10% of 8400. So what is 10% of 8400? 840 dwelling units. So we have calculated your dilapidated dwelling unit only. Also put it in the formula. Number of households is how much? 10,000 minus existing household 8400 minus dilapidated household 840. And calculate this, you'll get something like C. Housing demand will be C. Now your question will come. See, okay, let's slow down a little bit. 2440 dwelling unit. 2440 dwelling unit is what? Housing shortage. Now, what is housing demand? Housing demand is what? Housing shortage, that is 2440 minus BPL population. Do we have any data about BPL population? We don't have any data about BPL population. So, we will assume that everybody is able to pay. Basically, you will take this as 0. You don't have any data about it. So, we don't take it 0. We basically neglect this particular end. Okay? Or you can take it as 0 at the same. It's the same thing at the end of the day. So, basically, your housing demand will become 2440 dwelling units only. Okay? I hope it is clear, all of you. So, these are the kind of questions which will be asked. They will not ask any very difficult question. That's pretty simple. I think you can see. Now, these are numerical questions, but we can have a little bit, something like a little bit theoretical questions also. So, this was a question which was asked in your previous year question paper of 2017. Now, these are all your GATE question papers. Please remember, okay? Because this kind of lengthy questions will not be asked. This kind of lengthy questions will never be asked in your competitive examinations. Chaliye. Yes. So, this is the previous year question of 2017. What is the question asking? There will be a new concept that we will be learning here. Okay? So, first let's try to understand. I hope I am visible to all of you. Just a second. There's some issue, I guess. Okay. I guess it is streaming. Let me know if there's some issue in your net, okay? In my streaming. Okay, fine, it's working. Chali, what is the question saying is, Data on households with one or more married couples sharing room with a person aged 12 years or more is used for computing housing density, housing shortage, housing price, housing affordability. So this kind of data in which we get the number of households who have one or more married couple sharing room with a person aged 12 years or more is used for computing what? It's used for calculating what? Now first we have to understand what does this mean. So there's a term called congestion factor. It's a term called congestion factor. Congestion factor is something which is basically socially unacceptable. Okay, so what is congestion factor? It's a definition is given by households having the same definition basically. Okay, I'm not going to write it down. The same definition. Households with one or more married couples sharing room with a person aged 12 years or more. So if you have a married couple who are sharing their room with somebody who is 12 years or more, that kind of results in a congestion factor. Generally in India, we have seen that, whenever kids are small, they do sleep with their parents. But after a certain point, the kids move out and they have their own rooms in the same house. But if you are forced to share, or let's say not you, but if there is a married couple who is forced to share a room with somebody with a child who is 12 years or more, then that is a congestion factor. Now, when we are talking about housing shortage, see, this is a very basic calculation which we did here. But actually, when you do housing shortage calculation, you do take into consideration what did we see? What are the factors that we take into consideration? We take into consideration your number of households, your number of existing dwelling units, and your dilapidated dwelling units. But there are a few more factors which we take into consideration while we are doing housing shortage calculation. That is, one of the things which you take into consideration is what? Congestion factor. That means, let's say there is a particular house in which you have married couple who is sharing the room with 12, somebody who is 12 years or more. That means what? You need to provide an extra housing. That's a congestion factor. Okay, so those things also have to be taken care of. This congestion factor is also looked into while calculation of your housing shortage. So definitely it is not something that we look into while calculation of density or price or affordability, but there is something that we look into while calculation of housing shortage. So this conceptually also you have to understand what is shortage, what are the factors that we consider while calculating shortage. It's a big chapter in itself. When we, in our classes, in our live classes or in our offline classes, when we take this up, so this is one entire class. So there are a lot of factors that we talk about, the reasons of this issues, housing shortage issues, what are the factors which are considered, definition of all those factors, congestion factor, obsolescence factor, then you have this homelessness. All of these things are looked into in depth here in this class, because that much is not possible. It's a live session, so I've tried to cover important things in the short, in a very crisp manner. Okay, so this kind of questions can be asked in your GATE, or even you can expect this kind of questions in a competitive examination. Okay, now I have it's a simple question, but I have a practice question for you. So this was asked in PYQ 2015. It's also a simple one only. So I want you all to try to attempt this question, and please you can write down or you can post your answers in the comment section below. Okay, this particular question, it's a simple one. It's a practice question. Whatever you have learned in the class, based on that data or using that data, you can easily solve this question without any problem. So I would require you right now, when we are done with the class, please look into this question and solve it, and post your answers down in the comment section below. Okay, let's try to make it a little bit interactive. Fine, you can post it, or if you see that there is somebody who's not able to understand, you can help them also. Fine. So with this, we have come to an end of this particular session, but it's not an end of the series. It's just the beginning of the series. We'll be coming up with much more similar kind of concepts, concepts which are very important in GATE, which are inevitably asked in GATE every year, and which is not just helpful for your GATE, will also be helpful for your other examinations in case you're aspiring for other examinations. So to keep updated, or to stay updated with all these kind of new releases which we'll have, new sessions which we'll have, there'll be a lot of previous year question paper sessions, there'll be a lot of preparation sessions. So to be updated with that, you can subscribe to our KP classes channel, so that you can stay updated with the live channels which are coming up in the upcoming months. Also, if you're preparing for gate examinations, if you're looking forward to prepare for gate examinations, or let's say if you're looking forward to prepare for your CPWD Deputy Architects examination, or let's say HPSC paper, or we have UPPSC ATP paper also, which has been recently released. The dates are still going on. 14th September was supposed to be the last date, but it's not the last date. So if you have not filled up the form, you can still go and fill up the form. The date is extended up till 21st September. Okay, so if you're looking forward for all these, you're aspiring for all these examinations and you want a little bit of guidance in that, you can definitely call up our counselors. New batches are starting every week. You can talk to them and you can get enrolled and get our guidance. So this will be it for today's session. If you have any doubts, you can post your queries below. Thank you, everyone.